Welcome to the Joy Lab podcast, where we help you uncover and foster your most joyful self. Your hosts, Dr. Henry Emmons and Dr. Amy Prasek, bring you the ideal mix of soulful and scientifically sound tools to spark your joy, even when it feels dark. When you're ready to experiment with more joy, combine this podcast with the full Joy Lab program over at joylab.coach.
Hello, I'm Henry Emmons, and welcome to Joy Lab.
And I'm Amy Prasek. Here at Joy Lab, we infuse science with soul to help you uncover joy. And as you may know, we are working through our Podcourse. And today we're going to talk about some foundational supplements to support mental health and also overall well-being. First, gotta say, remember it is important to check with your doctor before beginning any new supplement. So as a reluctant supplement taker myself, I don't like taking them, but there are some that I do really rely on. We'll talk about those. But there's a lot of controversy, certainly with supplements. Some folks take fistfuls, and other folks will say they are a complete waste of time, practitioners included. You might hear that from someone. I've heard that from a GP or two in my day as well. So, Henry, let's talk first about sort of just the controversy or the use of supplements. Can you share your thoughts on that?
Well, my view has evolved over time. There was a time years ago when I was really first getting into more of the holistic work, where I think I was so tired of prescribing medication that I really just wanted to use supplements exclusively or natural therapies exclusively. And I quickly realized that medication has a role too, and supplements aren't going to replace that entirely, not for everyone. But I do think that there's a kind of a logical sequence that we can take when we are trying to balance brain chemistry. And so the very first place to start is with diet. And, we're covering diet in the podcast too, and we have this great series on radically sensible eating with Carolyn Denton. Diet is so important, and we think first and foremost, that's where we should start. And theoretically, if we were really, really careful and good about our diets, we may not need supplements, at least not these basic foundational ones. But it's just not always the case that we eat a pristine diet with food that is chock full of the nutrients we need, or the food is going to provide enough of certain things to cover for some of our genetic quirks and vulnerabilities, which obviously some of us have. And so supplements I see as being a good bridge between diet only and medication only. And I think they can be used to some extent for some people to allay the need for medication, or even people who are on medication to supplement the medication itself in such a way that it continues to be effective. Really one of the biggest problems with medication use over long periods of time is that for many people, they lose their effectiveness. And I think there's complex reasons for that, but one of them is that the medication powerfully changes how the brain uses certain neurotransmitters, but it does not change the body's ability to make the neurotransmitters. To do that, we really have to bring in the right ingredients, the micronutrients and all of the good stuff that our body needs to make serotonin and dopamine and all the other important things.
Yeah, so let's get into that, those foundational elements to support production of those neurotransmitters and to support overall well-being. Just a moment to sort of my evolution to this place. When I sort of dove headfirst into integrative modalities, I certainly thought that I did not need any supplements, that I could get it straight from diet because I eat very well. And just stubborn as I am, I put all the wonderful foods into my system, but still needed support. And then when I took the right supplements for me, I felt better, and it was frustrating, but it was true. And so it's something that I rely on, not because I want to, but it just makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into those. The foundational supplements that you have shared with me, Henry, that you share with your patients. Do you want to talk about those sort of essential ones to create that perfect recipe for neurotransmitter production?
Sure. And you said something that is really worth highlighting, which is that these are also for overall well-being. We're talking about mood and helping prevent or get out of depression or anxiety. But the things that we'll talk about with the foundations are important for the entire body, which really fits with
Yeah.
our way of thinking about this, which is that the brain is part of the body. There isn't really a distinction between mental health and physical health, but we need to do everything we can to support the body functioning well as a whole. So that's really what these things do. But they do have some special relevance for mental and emotional well-being. So the 5 foundational supplements that cover a lot of the bases here. The first is a really solid B complex or potentially a multivitamin. The second is omega-3, those healthy fats, brain healthy fats. Third is magnesium, my favorite supplement. Fourth is vitamin D. And then fifth is good gut support through a probiotic and potentially prebiotic as well.
Okay, so let's get into those just a little bit more. So B vitamins, and maybe if you want to touch on activated B vitamins or preferred choice for Bs.
Yeah, so this is an area where the genetic vulnerabilities really come into play. And the reason for that is that there's a known correlation. This has been known for a while now, that a certain percentage of people who have recurrent depression, especially the kind of more severe kind of biological recurrent depression, that they're genetically unable to convert certain B vitamins from your food, from what you bring into your body, to convert it from that into its active form. There's a complex chemical process called methylation that has to occur in order for the B vitamin to be activated and therefore used in its usable form by the body. This is particularly true for folate or folic acid, but B6 is also a factor, and even B12. It's important to get them in the right form in order for the body to be able to really use it. So people who have this genetic quirk, if you will, they could eat a diet really high in folate, all those fresh leafy greens, they could eat them right off the stalk, and they still might not be able to get enough of the folate or folic acid in the form that the body needs it. So it's really important that these B vitamins be activated.
So we'll also, to note here, we'll put links to all of these in our show notes and some of the ones that we really like, and also where you can purchase through our partner store, FullScript, as a way to also support this podcast, keep it moving, and all the directions on how to sign up and then receive a discount also through Natural Mental Health will be available there. So you can check the show notes. You don't have to take all the notes here. So B vitamins we just covered. Let's go to omegas. And maybe, Henry, if you can hit on vegetarian options as well, instead of just pulling fish out of the sea, if that's a concern for folks. Or maybe actually taking a omega capsule. Yeah.
Yes, but actually, before I get into the omega-3s, let me just make a couple more comments about the B vitamins. The B vitamins might be, for people with certain forms of depression, may be the most important of the things we're talking about. So it's really worth highlighting. But I want to say a couple of other things. One is that the doses do need to be higher than what is in the recommended daily allowance for these to be really effective. And so this notion that you're wasting your money, you're just, B vitamins are just kind of going through your system and they're totally ineffective taking high doses. I think that there is a reason for some people to take more than just what you get in your food or the recommended daily allowance. So it's more like a therapeutic dose rather than just covering the bases kind of dose. Second thing is not to underestimate the power of these. There's been some really interesting, good research on B vitamins alone as an intervention for depression, making a significant difference, particularly, I think, in relapse prevention. And then this is just an anecdote, but it just is seared in my memory. Some years ago, after one of my books came out, I can't remember which, but I was asked to speak at a Buddhist center. So this is a mindfulness center. And I spoke and then we had a Q&A period, and the questions were mostly about some spiritual aspect of this approach. But I had an elderly gentleman in the back of the room who I think this was his first time ever in a Buddhist center, but he raised his hand and he just really wanted to make a comment. And I was expecting something related to mindfulness and, emotion and something. And instead, he shared his story. I think he was 87 years old at the time. And his wife had died a couple of years ago, and he became just severely depressed, suicidal at times. And his neighbors became so concerned about him. And he was on some medication that was not really pulling him out. And so they gave him my book to read. So here he is in the back of the room holding up my book. And his testament is to the thing that he did that he got from my book was to take B vitamins, high dose. And it was like it turned the key, and his medication suddenly started working. His mood lifted within 2 weeks. I mean, it was just a remarkable story. But
that's awesome.
Anyway, they can work. And then I do want to say 2 things about the potential downside or side effects of B complex. One is that some people do find them a little bit hard on the tummy. Some people find that create a little discomfort or nausea even. And so if that's the case, you might need to get by with just a B6 or just a folic acid. And then the second thing is that there's a very small number of people who find the B vitamins a little bit overstimulating, kind of overactivating. And if that's the case, again, maybe just B6 in a certain form would be a little bit easier on your system. So with those things said, let's go on to omega-3.
Yeah. Can I say quickly, I have a B vitamin and a caffeine rule. If it's after 10, no activated B vitamins or caffeine.
There you go.
Because I feel like it does activate me a little bit, which is great at like 8 a.m. when I'm rearing to go, but
exactly
not great at 12 a.m. when I'm trying to fall asleep. So,
Yep. Good reminder. If you're taking a high dose B complex, take it in the morning.
Yeah. All right. Omegas.
Okay. So the omega-3, and this is another area where there is really a lot of research, particularly for bipolar illness, but I think too for depression and any form of inflammation. The omega-3s are useful at toning down inflammation in the body and also supporting good communication between nerve cells, the neurons. The cell wall of in other words, the outer layer of the nerve cells are made up largely of omega-3 fatty acids, and they get incorporated and make those receptors and those cell walls function at their very best. So it's really important for the entire nervous system, but also for anybody who has inflammation. And remember that depression for probably a good percentage of people is related to systemic inflammation. So the omega-3s really help to tone that down. And most of the research is done on marine omega-3s, on fish oil. But as you point out, Amy, not everybody either wants to eat fish oil, or some people don't like the taste or the smell of it, which, by the way, you can reduce if you keep it in the refrigerator. But still, there's also reasons to use vegetable sources for omega-3. And you can get good ones now with evening primrose oil, flax, borage seed oil. You can get products that combine several in one. You can get algae-based omega-3 as well. So you're still getting it from marine products, but just it's vegetable life instead of fish life. And I think the key for all of these is to be taking enough of it, because they're not cheap. Omega-3 is not cheap. You probably want a really highly concentrated product, so you don't have to take, a fistful of pills. These are big pills. You can get them in capsule form, or you can get them in liquid form, although most people don't like slurping down a spoonful of a
cocktail of fish.
Fish oil. But they are big pills, and so you want to kind of be efficient with it and get the highly potent forms of it.
Yeah. Again, we'll have these noted in show notes, links for those. Let's move to your favorite supplement.
My personal favorite, magnesium, probably because I'm a little bit of an anxious type, and magnesium is so good for me personally, but I think it's really got a lot of broad usefulness. So magnesium is a mineral, and minerals, have a positive or a negative charge to them. And magnesium is really important for nerve cell function and communication. So it's a way for the brain cells and your muscles as well to relax after they have been active. So the nerve cells fires or the muscle cell contracts, and then it needs to relax in order to do it again. And magnesium is important for that happening. So I think magnesium is really good for sleep. It's good for calming anxiety. It's good for making serotonin and supporting mood kind of broadly. So I just love it for a lot of reasons. And I think it's also good for keeping the bowels moving. But that is one of the side effects, is that some people, if they're taking too much, can get loose stools or cramping. So you just have to watch the dose. The form of magnesium I like for mood and anxiety is called magnesium L-threonate. It's a little more expensive, but it's a great way to really try to support your sleep and your nervous system and calm anxiety.
Henry, do you find that magnesium L-threonate is easier on the stomach?
I think it is easier, certainly easier than magnesium citrate.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
That's what most people purchase is
Right.
magnesium citrate. And that's actually what people use to relieve
Yes.
constipation. Okay, so it's a little
Right.
harsher on the
Yes.
stomach. I think magnesium glutamate, L-glutamate, is the kind that's easiest on the stomach. So that's another option for folks who really just don't tolerate magnesium very well. Try the magnesium glutamate.
Side note, I was studying in India for a while, and the traditional Tibetan healers in their parliament in exile, they would grind the herbs on magnesium rocks, the herbs that were used for anti-inflammatory herbs and things like that. It was kind of magical. So thinking about sort of that relationship of magnesium for these tinctures or medicines that were focused on mood support and anti-inflammatory responses, it's kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, wouldn't that be great if
Yeah.
our pharmaceutical companies were like outside, sort of blending herbs on rocks and God, very different. So
I can easily imagine you doing that, Amy.
if I led a pharmaceutical company, be
Yeah.
lots of rocks and stones and sticks, and it'd be very different. All right, let's talk about vitamin D3.
So D3, which is the active form of vitamin D, it's called a vitamin, but it really acts in the body more like a hormone. It's super important for all kinds of physiological processes, including supporting mood and reducing inflammation. And so vitamin D is a really simple thing to add. I think living in North America, particularly north of Atlanta, that's kind of the line that the angle of the sun is really insufficient for much of the year for anybody living north of that. Certainly living where we do, Amy, in Minnesota, it's kind of a no-brainer. I take it. I recommend my patients take it starting around October 1st, all the way until around April 1st, or even through the month of April. I think around 5,000 units which seems high, but it's a really good amount for most folks, unless you know that your vitamin D level is already normal or even a little high. I think it's a good amount to support you through the winter months without becoming toxic.
Do you suggest with your patients, Henry, D3 in the summer?
I do for some people. If people know that their vitamin D levels have been low, that they've gotten the test measured through their primary care clinic, then they should stay on it through the summer. I think, too, people who simply don't go out in the sun much, maybe they're fair-skinned or burn easily or just, have had some kind of skin cancer, anybody who's really careful not to get sun exposure, maybe a lower dose, like 2,000 units in the summer per day is a good insurance.
All right, let's roll into this last foundational supplement, probiotics.
So most of us are familiar with or hearing about the gut-brain connection, right? It's so super important. We know now that in many respects, the health of your brain starts in your gut, really. And a big part of that has to do with having a good, healthy balance of good bacteria in your gut, the kind that actually help produce some of our neurotransmitters like serotonin. 90% of your body's serotonin is actually in the gut, and these healthy bacteria are part of the reason for that. There are so many things these days that can disrupt our normal healthy balance in the gut, including our diets that are sort of high in sugar or low in fiber, taking antibiotics, being exposed to toxic things through our water or our food supply. So there's lots of reasons why it can go awry. And I think a probiotic if you are dealing with any gastrointestinal discomfort or digestive issues. It's a really good thing to do for a while. I don't think people need to take the pill form forever, but maybe for a few months, 3 to 4 months, maybe 6 months. But you want a really high potency probiotic with a variety of different types of probiotics in them. And you also may want to vary it up from time to time so you're not always taking the same pill for months or years at a time. They're kind of expensive, and so I think people should also really look for dietary sources of probiotics like yogurt and kefir, kombucha, fermented vegetables. I think it's a good idea just generally to eat some form of fermented food virtually every day.
All right. So we've talked about B vitamins, omegas, magnesium, D3, probiotics, and just to be aware of cost and quantity of pills in the mouth, which are things that I very much concerned about because I don't like taking supplements. I don't like paying for them. So I know something that, Henry, you have told me about is a good multi. So I take what's called Neuro Mood Pure Pack, and then seasonally or so, I'll do a probiotic. And that has honestly just worked wonders for me. And there's another multi I was on as well that I really liked, but this one I like because it also includes an anti-inflammatory curcumin. It's a beautiful blend for me. It's worked really well. So can you talk about how we can condense this or some other options to make the foundations work for us cost-wise, frustration-wise?
You bet. Well, one thing is that you may not need to supplement with all of the things we've talked about all of the time. I personally don't eat quite as healthy in the winter months. And plus, I'm trying to stave off seasonal mood changes. So I start all of these around October 1st and stay on them through April. And by and large, I come off of them in the summer. I stay on my magnesium, but I don't take everything all year round. So some folks might want to do this seasonally, or maybe they want to do it if they're going through a particularly hard stretch with stress and you just know that you need some extra nutritional support.
Yeah.
Or, if you've got certain problems with your gut or with sleep or something, then it's really a good idea to focus on those times, especially if you're concerned about cost. I also really like being able to put things together into a single pill or a single packet. So you don't have to buy several separate bottles, which is a lot more expensive. You don't have to fuss with them every day. The packet you mentioned, Amy, I just think is really great. It's the Neuro Mood Pure Pack is designed specifically for depression and to support depression or anxiety. It covers the foundational basis plus some additional amino acids just to support good, healthy brain chemistry in a broader way. And it's a lot less expensive than buying them all separately, and it's a lot easier.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I love that very flexible approach to supplements that you just shared with us, Henry. Just tuning in, like what works for you, dependent on the situation and season and cost. So there's beauty in that, really listening to our bodies to give us some insight. Yeah. So folks, I hope this has been super helpful. Supplements are something that I really appreciate. I'm grateful that I can take them because they do help me. And so if you are looking for supplements as well, we have our Fullscript partner store. We would love to have you support the podcast by purchasing through us. And you have a discount through Natural Mental Health that you can find when you sign up for our partner store. So again, I hope this has been really helpful, and we'll see you for our next Podcourse lesson, which we're going to start to explore the mind and heart in the next section.
Thank you for listening to the Joy Lab podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, visit joylab.coach to learn more about the full Joy Lab program. Be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Please remember that this content is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to provide medical advice and is not a replacement for advice and treatment from a medical professional. Please consult your doctor or other qualified health professional before beginning any diet change, supplement, or lifestyle program. Please see our terms for more information.